Day everyone, we are here at the debriefing for the national report for 2012. I do thank everyone coming here. I understand there are a lot of technical difficulties in South Africa at the moment, particularly around the whole load shedding, and yes, we are trying to move forward with that, but this is recorded and persons will be able to watch it later on, I believe on YouTube or other social networks. So I'm going to give you some backgrounds or details from the report that was put together. This is a debriefing of the South African National Report for the International EMF project and also International Optical Radiation, and for the International Advisory Committee. And this was recently done because of still everyone recovering from COVID. It was done virtually, but hosted in Geneva, Switzerland. And this is how South Africa was presented for the report. I'm going to go through different processes. We'll go through the different pages, elaborate on certain points, and help you understand how it got you today, where we're moving forward, and how we're able to grow everything step by step. For those of you that trying to access or want to see the report, there is this wonderful bit.ly link that we've created, so you can snap it and use it to again access the report. But also, I believe in the comment section, Vilma will be kind enough to also have the link to the report published for everyone in the public domain, because it is all part of that. And what we'll do is we'll go do some backgrounds, how we got here. There was a lot of participants in this year's meeting. I mean, we have 5 pages of participating members, representatives from the different countries of the world that are speaking for the different governments, and these just go on and on and on. So it's quite a lengthy thing, quite involved, and it's about sharing, engaging, and every single country giving their input of how to help each other out. So what sort of got us here today? There has been some concerns about previous reporting or technology evolving a lot. And I felt in this report, we needed to cover history again of how did this committee get formed over the 26 years? How has it evolved? Has it been growing? What have we learned from science? What have we learned from politics? What have we learned to moving forward, particularly in the context of South Africa and other countries around the world, to our unique situation? So even though the COVID pandemic has been a terrible impact on many persons, it also provides a lot of great new advancements that we can take advantage of. So one key thing that what set the theme of this message, and this is when I was meeting or engaging with Eric van Rogen, and this is from the Netherlands Ministry of Health and ICNIP, and the discussion that in the realm of EMF, optical radiation, and people having concerns or looking for solutions. From his wisdom and practical experience dealing with different persons around the world, one should first understand light first and its impact and how it works, even though light's one of the most complicated things to explain, like from a technical point of view, but it's the most easiest and practical application. And what has been found with this model is that, and that's what we demonstrate in the report and putting together, when persons in the public and scientists and government understand light better first, then EMF and all other spectrums become much, much easier to understand. And this is a very important thing. And I mean, this is why we got those wonderful endorsements from Ministry of Health and ICNIP for the appointment of discussing these processes going forward. And as government, one of these unifying principles is what's called the Batho Pele principles. And this was, again, we bring back here history where it goes back to the late Nelson Mandela and the growth of South Africa, the adaptation, the changing, the recognition of how we are different, but we also have a unified goal of working together. And a key thing of Batho Pele was about, and this is what you'll find in the link, is about consultation, talking with the people, and understanding what is it you need from us as a person, and understanding that government is not an ivory tower. Government is you, the persons. It is you, it's a scientist, it's a citizen, it's a child, it's all the persons that are involved together. And it's not just this ivory tower, but you as an individual person, how you consult and work with it as representation of people is what helps grow and evolve a country and government systems. So yes, there is a service of standards that we insist on. We want to have access to fair items and again, very important, being courteous, not to accept insensitive treatment. And this is what was part of Nelson Mandela's Nobel Prize for Peace acceptance, was that no organization, institution, or person will be insensitive towards me or take away my dignity. And it's one of those methods that really did drive government. And it's something we've been working on and using science, which we're going to come in through the process, to help elaborate how we can use it to actually avoid these misinterpretations, these insensitivities. And the way we do this is by actually giving all the information, being accountable, showing transparency. And just because something is bad or doesn't sound politically tasteful does not mean we should hide away from it and work with it to, very importantly here, address the complaints, and it must bring about positive action, because that is how we give value for money. So again, it doesn't matter how bad it is. You say, look, I'm sorry, I did not know, but what can we do to create positive action? That's what this report did a lot in the themes of working over the last year. And that was vitally important. And we come, a key theme, this is what we started off on the winter school program that was at the start of this year. And it was by a wonderful man named Paul Wilkins. He had a wonderful TED talk, and he explained this lecture of Albert Einstein. And what was key with this talk, or that Einstein gave the lecture, is that even though he was questioned that he gave the same exam for this and the same testing for his class the previous year, and questioned that it's unethical. How can you give students the exact same exam test that you given the previous year? And I mean, because it could be considered cheating, or one could try learn the answer in advance. However, what was critical, and this is what's important with science and politics and policy and learning, is that even from a day or a year, the answers can change, and the answers in our case in many facets have changed. And what's important is that, and this is what it means from Albert Einstein, is that what was true for then is also more important true for today. And we live in a world where questions may be the same, but the answers have changed. And this means that what has gotten some of us here now would no longer get us to our next destination. If we have done something now unemployed, or we have a horrible disease, or government infrastructure has failed, and we do not change to the new answers, we are not going to get the results to moving forward. And that's what we have to start doing things we have not done before. And this was a very anecdotal reference that we put in a video here, a wonderful talk of a musical demonstration by the late Johnny Clegg. He was an anthropologist at Rhodes University. He became a musician, and he was touring, and he was really acting as this bridge segue between playing music differently and understanding how things are done differently for different types of, my interpretation, mitochondrial DNA haplotypes. And one of the things you'll look through the song here, and he explains, is this marching song. And this marching song is critical because during the times of apartheid and moving on, when these persons would march, do these march protests from zone to zone, they would march 60 to 70 kilometers, and they would play this marching song, keep the rhythm, keep going. But very key thing is that they were using nature's rhythm, nature's song and light and photons to keep the coupled mitochondrial haplotype to keep on going, moving forward. And in this doing this, the guitar is stringed differently. And that's also what's quite important, is that it kind of links to the ventricles. So you have a guitar, it has a chasm here, or an opening section over here. And you have these guitar strings. And now in the brain, okay, we've got these ventricles. All right, and they're kind of like these sound chasms. They're these sound chambers similar to what a guitar is. And when one has disease, or it's finely tuned, so we talk about resonance or vibration and frequencies in electromagnetism, is that if the guitar string is not tuned correctly, you are not going to have the correct sound. And it's not going to give that vibration or resonance to have that music and that movement. And what's also important here, demonstrated by Johnny Clegg, is that he would tune the guitar differently based on what is the purpose, or what is the coupled DNA haplotype, coupled or uncoupled. And it's a very key message, and you will translate and how we can mix it together. We have more synergy, we have more movement, we have more growth. And there's also a reason why I chose Johnny Clegg here as a thematic element, because he died of prostate cancer, and also like the late Desmond Tutu as well. However, different lives, different haplotypes, different adaptations to biology, and that's why it's quite a big difference on the age of their passing, which we used to explain in the science. So it's very important is that, again, we're referencing Einstein, and if the answers change, even back then, Einstein discussed there's this relationship between physics and biology, and this was decades before it was well established, which again comes to the thematic part of this report. So this message of being different and having to apply the science differently and how we understand it was from, again, another Nobel Peace Prize awardee, was the late Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Mpilo Tutu. And it's important to recognize it because he did vital, instrumental scientific mathematic works, even though he was a religious leader, but he made instrumental contributions for biophysics, quantum biology, and the submolecular medical and agricultural sciences. And what was a key theme in Tutu's message was that you have to involve the general public. You have to involve scientists science and diplomacy and people in this whole process to get over fake news, pseudoscience, and all those things. And this message was actually demonstrated before with, for example, the late John Paul Pope II, right? So for those of you who didn't know, John Paul the Pope II, when he's meeting with the Political Academy of Sciences, and this is well published, John Paul Pope II took Albert Einstein to drastically change and upgrade the scientific policies in Catholicism and the Vatican. And it was this message how he brought it together. And the reason also how he did this is if you ever look at the history of John Paul Pope II, he was a very different pope to many popes before, but he followed the same practices as Schrodinger, where he would actually take the teenagers and the youth, the brain myelination, and he would take them up into the mountains, running up into the mountains, skin exposed, deuterium depleted water, high UV photons, in order to energize them to be more connected with God, or this resonance, and how to understand the science and to elevate it. And he would do this with his teachings and movements. And it's a way of involving the public, the way of bringing this process forward. And this was, the example was this relationship that Archbishop Tutu did with Netherlands, where he created this relationship with Professor Ring van Gronel, giving him the Tutu Award, and we did amazing switches and adjustments and learning of how photon and photon synthesis in plants, it also goes to renewable energy, is applied. And it's based on these works that then enabled me to then be elected to this process of continuing the work and continuing the science diplomacy. But it would have not been possible if the late Desmond Tutu did not demonstrate the same as John Paul Pope II, of how you have to link science, diplomacy, and the people connected together. And this message of understand, like Batho Pele, it's about, even if you have done wrong, be with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, be open, be honest, let's work together, let's give love, let's move forward. And we find these solutions and not being afraid of things. And that's a very, very key thing. It was a very important message that came with this. And as was said, with Albert Einstein here, of this relationship between physics and biology being together for decades, you have this field called biophysics, right? And biophysics.org is, this whole amazing involvement of using physics and biology and measuring, understanding the why and how it applies to theories of giving amazing understandings into sciences. So this is part of why, that there's this change, and we're having to train and now physicians and scholars and so forth. So this whole thing of quantum biology into the application of quantum mechanics, biological processes, into submolecular medical science and agricultural medical sciences came forward thanks to the South African Defence Force, Military Health Services, where we had Lieutenant General Dr. Aubrey Sidibe. And Aubrey Sidibe also was, during the changes of South Africa moving forward, he was in Germany, a lot of training, he was involved in different combat situations, but he got to experience science and nature in very different ways, and he had this interest of how quantum biology and timing and mechanisms could help explain everything further. Unfortunately, during his time, they did not have certain instruments he was looking for, but it was still the continuing of this work, like the Tutu, of how can we move forward of training physicians, improving health services, how can we apply this better to help South Africans, and particularly these coupled and uncoupled haplotypes. And we get this also thanks to the work of the late Luc Montagnier, right? So Luc Montagnier, again, Nobel Prize for helping co-discover HIV, and despite certain persons having other media press inputs, it does not matter, because we are looking at the data and not at the politics of other persons' opinions. Because if it wasn't thanks to this work of Luc Montagnier and the supporting science diplomacy around it, we would not have had these amazing updates to our own Equality Act, which is the promotion of equality and prevention of unfair discrimination for South Africa. Because even what Montagnier demonstrated very well, even though the language can seem a bit strange, but French persons do things differently, is that how EM, when it interacts with the water in our cells, our body's made up of water, we have different states, how it can impact it and organic tissues before it reaches the brain, the type of information or deliverance of what's going to move forward. And this links to this whole area of epigenetics. So epigenetics, you have the Franklin Award, which was Doug Wallace. For those of you who do not know what the Franklin Award is, it is the American equivalent of a Nobel Prize. So again, a Nobel Prize is not an absolute truth, but it is a general consensus amongst the scientific community. So what's important here is that even with Doug Wallace's work and his acceptance awards presentation, he demonstrates very, very well how it's a different of understanding between what we knew before, and we have different answers to the same questions, and how water and how the interaction of light and the different states of water and charge is very different, and it takes very big differences out there. But again, South Africa had very strong contributions to this, and amazing change between coupled and uncoupled, thanks to Prof. Himla, who got the President's Award. So what's important here is that it's not about skin color. It's not about, if you're dark or light. We look at rather, what is the coupling or uncoupling potential of your mitochondrial DNA? So you have a nuclear DNA when it talks more about genetics. But what Doug Wallace's work shows is that, well, probably, you could elaborate about over 90% of diseases are epigenetic, meaning they're influenced by the environment, where a very small percentage is genetic. So, and this is also very important what Himla was explaining. She did her talks, but her great works with South Africa and showing particularly about the koi and the SAN and how we have what's called an L0 or coupled haplotype, played significant involvement to actually enabling Doug Wallace to be receiving this award. So again, it's not just her, but also the team, and South Africa should be very proud of what this enabled. So what is important here, and what we understand from it, is that even with Doug Wallace demonstrated with coupled or uncoupled and this bioadaptation with nature, coupled haplotypes, when they're using this bioadaptation in nature, have a far better resilience to HIV/AIDS than uncoupled haplotypes. Again, very key thing. So just by doing this simple DNA test that persons can order, I think even on FNB, eBucks now, you can order these DNA tests to tell you what type of category you are. And it gives you a drastic difference on how the answers have changed. And it's very important with the Equality Act, because where it refers to HIV/AIDS, and we're working to see how we can structure legislation so that it actually will update now to both coupled and uncoupled, because it will distinctly help define how much quicker or different your medical treatment will be to help better results. So even, for example, in Netherlands here at Amsterdam, one of the procedures when you admitted to ICU, they do one of these testings of the genetics to see which type of treatment is going to work best for, say, for sepsis, so that you have a better outcome when you are admitted to hospital. And just do that simple test saves a lot of money, saves a lot of lives, and greatly impacts it. And this is what's very important here, is that, and many of you may be familiar, and it's referenced in this report, is this Netflix show called Coded Bias. And it's really powerful, really great. I mean, look at the video, it's really useful, because again, it demonstrates how information, when you update it, is correct. And what was great about the work is that when she took our own parliamentarians and had their face encoded to the system, it was a way of showing how different the data can be. However, if one did not update it, and one's using a lot more AI now to code your medical treatment or how you treat it or where you direct it from. I mean, just based on these IBM Watson or Microsoft or different algorithms, there would say a famous person, even like Oprah Winfrey, right? A coupled haplotype is recognized as male and something different, right? Even though it could be maybe she's the first lady, very small weakness point. So these things, even the famous Michelle Obama, all these things change, and we need to update the answers so that we can have better progress going forward. Otherwise, one is going to mistreat the need for it. And this is very, very critical, important with STEM and research and wanting to have policies of women elevating to higher levels of government, management working, because their DNA type requires a different change in environment, particularly women versus men. Otherwise, we see on the epidemiology data that they are much more prone to actually having diseases that will take them out of the equation of being able to serve the public accordingly. So it's important that we recognize and take care and change these answers to these same questions before. Otherwise, we cannot sustain our country. And that's very important. That's what's great, very important with this whole COVID outbreak and socioeconomic growth. So, and this even, I got to the last year do a number of equality court applications to, again, how do we have communication? What is the stumbling blocks here that are not helping us moving forward? And what I loved about Judge Kasim Soodyall, his lordship, where that's what we say in court, you refer to a high court judge as a lordship, where in magistrates court you would refer to as worship. Again, this whole religious thing that comes through, and it can be a bit uneasy for some, but that is what is the current practice. But what's very important is that he conveyed, and this is what we talked about the situation in the case, that this is a human rights issue. We do have very outdated legislation, and it must be updated. And even though we have different persons, different needs, we must accommodate them, and we find innovation in dealing with these issues and conflicting legislation. But the key thing is that we have to come together and find an amicable, practical solution. Very, very important here, because as South Africans need to understand the legislation governs us and how it complies and works together. If the person's, just because you are saying, look, I want to have a conversation, or we have these solutions, and the person says, I'm lawyering up, I'm shutting down, we're not having any communication, and you're forced to go to court, that's not what is designed to be done. We want to have conversation. This is Batho Pele principles of working together. If you do not know the answer, you just say, I do not know. But we have persons in Africa learning, we're doing training, how we can understand the better of the why to the what. And this is very, very important. So again, when we reference these different Nobel Prizes, and even when they're published every year, they are not the absolute truth, but they do give a general consensus of scientific community. So we don't need to re-applicate all these arguments and committees and everything else. That's already been done and does not need to become again and again and again. So again, there was still some confusion in South Africa with persons asking, okay, why is the South African Department of Health not reporting anymore? It was previously Leon du Toit. And here we have even the letter from the PI application, information officer, which is Mr. G. Vissing. And this was done back in 2018, where he was stating, confirming that, okay, Leon du Toit and the Department of Health is no longer reporting this reporting since 2018, even though it's vitally important that, and this is what Emile told the Department of Health, is that South Africa is required to submit a national report every single year. So again, we have COVID, it's not been done. We even did a PI application with DIRCO and their team, also confirmed they could not find someone in the Department of Health that was handling this or doing reporting or giving the information. So this does create quite an issue. And this is kind of why it wasn't the National Research Foundation, but South African taxpayers have been spending money on training up persons over the years, of which I am one of them. And it's through this process, and this is what's explained here by Emile's, Dr. Emile's report from the 2016, is that it's about involving many government departments together, not just one. And that's what this report is. And since last year and this year, the committee's been growing of involving more direct contact persons and evolving this growth and learning much better. So even from the WHO brochure, where explains information you find online, key thing here, it says any member state government can be involved and can report. And that's what we want. It's not just one party. EMF is a climate change element. It involves different facets and about working together. And this is very important. It's not just one, but anyone can do that. So even this whole process of NRF becoming the new coordinating member, and with me then being the speaker representative for this voice of South Africa. It's not my opinion, this report, it's represents from multiple persons. And that went through the to our UN mission. So again, it's a process of going through all the endorsements, and there's many more. It's going through the history of what have been training in South Africans moving forward. Where is my document I'm looking for? Give me a moment. Sorry, back to the process. So the whole thing of going with the, going to the Ministry of Health, we have a permanent mission in the UN and Geneva, her having to reference everything, going through the whole processing, CCing the ambassador, then having to go to DIRCO having to review the document, and then process everything and going back to, I've just lost my process. Oh, sorry, I had it here already underneath the other tabs. All right, so we're back to it, that's fine, but the whole point is that it's about governments work together, we're following what's put out, advertised in the public domain, so that any country can follow suit in this process, because with the this whole process of this adapted document from Emile, where you have the UN WHO, you have NGO organizations like ICNIP, you have public health authorities, and in my case, when I was introduced, it was done through the Netherlands Ministry of Health, and then goes from embassy, and then from there it was me distributing information, sharing research to different parties. But South Africa is part of this International Advisory Committee of multiple collaborating centers and national authorities working together. So that's a key thing, is that any country in the world is encouraged to be part of this, to share and knowledge. And it's kind of like the Olympics in a way, where parties are competing and sharing who can advance more and who can build things better and further. And that's what's very important here. And also trying to work on setting a pretty good quality or guideline or stand that we can move and grow things further. And that's kind of one of the reasons why the NRF was brought involved, because entity of the Department of Science and Innovation, because this is part of science diplomacy, and the NRF again with Desmond Tutu, is part of regulation of the International Science Council requirements. So it's about making the, like I said, positive change. We change things, we move forward. And that's what's very important here. So what happened was with this year's report compared to last year, last year I went to national speaker, I then had to present the reports to the committee and discuss the portfolio health committee. And one of the things and change became Dr. Kenneth Jacobs was that there was a very clear gap here, knowledge gap of persons in health and even doctors not understanding these fields and biophysics and understanding and learning. And we worked very hard from last year, this year to address it. How can we do it? And that's why, again, we worked in the strategy from Lieutenant General Aubrey Sidibe for the Defense Force, where under his command, I was working with the late Colonel Professor Dr. Malcolm Baker, who was chairperson of Research Ethics Committee and head of the Department of Neurology at one military hospital.